Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Hope you are doing well. Yes, you read the title correctly. I am leaving my ferrets, unfortunately. I haven't been away from my ferrets since November of last year. Since then, and most of the time, I am spending every single day with them and a good majority of each day. So this is a big deal for me. I have a lot of anxiety surrounding leaving my ferrets. I've become very attached. I guess you could say I have some separation anxiety. But the truth is, Brian really needs to see his family. I mean, we're getting married and there are people on his side that I have yet to meet. And so I really want to meet them. Unfortunately, it is just a lot of work to bring them down there with us. It's a long drive. There isn't a lot of space, wouldn't be able to free roam them. So we ultimately decided that they would be happier to stay here for the week with my sister. So I wanted to make a video talking about leaving your ferrets with a sitter, how to prepare for it, the questions that you should ask, how to find a trusted, reliable sitter. And I do have, I think, 2 videos, I'm not sure, out there on traveling with ferrets. So if that's something that you can do, definitely recommend bringing your ferrets with you if it's safe. Last time I went, I actually did bring the ferrets and I ended up leaving after like a day because I felt really guilty about not being able to free roam them enough. There are a couple different options that you can do with your ferrets, and I'm going to sort them from worst to best in my opinion. Everyone's gonna have a different opinion, everyone's gonna have different experiences. This list was just created based on my experiences, my past work experience working at facilities that took in ferrets. So the first option that I would recommend only as a last resort would be veterinary boarding. Some vet offices do offer some limited boarding to the public, fairly inexpensive. They simply just don't generally have the space to accommodate ferrets. As we know, ferrets are not caged animals. They require a lot of out-of-cage time. Generally, vet offices are just not able to provide that. So they'll possibly have an unsuitable living area, unsuitable free roam time, as well as it's just an overall stressful environment with the artificial lighting, the sick animals going in and out, loud noises, just the stress of a vet office. If your ferrets have a harder time adapting to new situations, to stressful environments, which I mean a lot of ferrets are going to, you're leaving them, they're going to be in a strange place. If they already have negative associations with the vet, which a lot of ferrets do, it's going to be a little bit harder on them. So the next option that I would recommend is a boarding specific facilities. So these facilities generally take in dogs and cats, but some do take in small animals. And so the costs for these facilities is going to range. They likely won't charge you an arm and a leg for ferrets, but you never know. They might charge extra if you have certain food instructions, medicine instructions. There are a couple of downsides to boarding your animals at these facilities. I actually have an entire blog post that I wrote very recently, experiences working at a couple different facilities that boarded animals. The things that I have seen, and I can't even talk about legally because it would get these places in trouble. Like, it's just, anyways, in general, you're probably going to have minimal out-of-cage time for the ferrets, possibly unsuitable setups unless you're able to provide your own cage. It's also a very stressful environment, and they are prone to illness. They're also prone to illness at a vet office, obviously, because there are sick animals around. But at boarding-specific facilities, ferrets are actually susceptible to something called canine cough or Bordetella, kennel cough. I've never actually heard of a ferret getting it, but apparently, according to veterinary websites, they are susceptible to it. So this is a extremely contagious condition that many boarding facilities have to deal with. Your ferrets don't even have to interact with the dog. It can just be in the air. The dog walks by their room. An employee doesn't properly wash their hands after handling a dog that might be sick, and so on. A lot of places are not entirely transparent when they have cases of kennel cough. So it can be very, very difficult to find a place that you can trust. I mean, I've worked at a couple of these facilities and I've been pretty disappointed in what I've witnessed, whether it be just negligence on the staff's end, people not knowing how to take care of the animal, people refusing to take care of the ferrets, staff yelling at, hitting animals, animals not being fed, forgotten about for days, left outside, meds being forgotten about, bedding being left soiled in the rooms without being cleaned. I mean, the list goes on, because unfortunately, not that I'm aware of, these facilities don't actually have like a person that comes in randomly during the year to check on the welfare of these animals. I mean, your pet isn't going to go home and tell you how unhappy they were. They might give you signs that they're unhappy and that they don't want to go back. Let me just end it with, I will never board any of my animals for any reason at a boarding specific facility ever again. Anyways, next one that I would recommend is hiring a sitter that will come to your house and check on your ferrets throughout the day, feed them. Now, this is probably going to be the most expensive option. However, you're more likely to get good quality care. And it should be a fairly low stress option for your ferrets because they get to stay in the place that they know. However, there are shady people out there. I have heard horror stories. May have little to no ferret experience, might accidentally step on the ferrets because they don't know how to just coexist with ferrets. I mean, it's not entirely without risk. You should thoroughly vet anyone who you're going to be welcoming into your home. I mean, that's just kind of standard. They're in your house, your belongings. And I'm going to talk more about that in a little bit. But the best option, if you can't bring your ferrets with you, of course, that would be the best option, would be to have a family member or trusted friend come to your house and take care of them, or have them at their house, whatever works best. So this is probably going to be the least expensive option if your family and friends are kind, and the lowest risk to both you and the ferrets. And this is what we chose to do for the ferrets. My sister's going to be staying here and watching them for me. Now, some considerations and tips before leaving your ferrets. The first one being, do any of your ferrets have separation anxiety? Because yes, it is a thing that ferrets can get, especially solo ferrets. So that's something to keep in mind and might be something that you want to address beforehand. Practice leaving them for short amounts of time, as well as, do they have a high maintenance health condition? And would they be possibly at risk for being left alone? Unless your sitter can be there all hours of the day, you know, there are some health conditions that might make it riskier. Number two is, again, thoroughly vet anyone before letting them watch your ferrets, especially strangers. It is totally okay to do a test run beforehand, have them send photos at each visit, set up a pet camera. You are not technically obligated to tell your sitter that you have a camera, but it's good to, you know, not lie about it if they ask you. Be honest, be transparent that you have a camera if they ask you. Again, you don't technically have to come out and tell them outright. You can if you choose to. Write the instructions down. Trust me, as a former pet sitter and working at these facilities, it is so helpful when people just write everything down. Doesn't matter how crazy it is. Less of a chance that the sitter is going to have to be pestering you about stuff. Just write it all down. Leave an emergency contact number, the contact information for the vet that you normally see, as well as the emergency vet. If they aren't ferret savvy, give them some tips and tricks beforehand. Shuffling your feet when they're running about, being all crazy. Don't step on piles of clothes or blankets that are left on the ground. Be careful when you sit on the couch, you know, stuff like that. The big one for me is be careful when entering and exiting the apartment, because Patsu is a little escape artist and will slip right through to go outside. He loves going outside. So here are some questions to ask a potential boarding place, like an actual facility or a vet office. The first one being, are you comfortable feeding a raw diet if this is relevant? Some facilities will either refuse to feed raw or they will charge you extra. And that also goes for medications. Some will not do medicine, some will only do certain medicines, and some will charge extra for medicine. How much out of cage time are you willing to provide? Now, keep in mind, you can't entirely trust these places. Your ferret isn't going to come home and say, "Mom, they didn't let me out of the cage at all." Big risk using these types of facilities. I don't want to say that everyone is evil and do whatever they want, don't care about your animal, but that's just what I've experienced. What is your protocol during an emergency? Do they have a vet on staff? Do they have a vet next door? How late and how early are your staff here? Will one dedicated staff member care for them, or is it kind of like a free-for-all? In my experience, for sort of like free-for-all type situations where anyone, when they have time, will take care of the ferrets, and no one is going to take care of the ferrets. That's just what I've experienced, because ferrets have a very bad reputation, as you probably know. People generally will not volunteer to take care of the stinky, bitey ferrets. Would they be kept in a separate area from the dogs? This is pretty important. If I was looking for one, I would not do one where the ferrets were kept in the same room as dogs, because they're loud, of course. It's like a shelter type environment, so they're going to be barking. Do staff wash and sanitize hands before handling small pets. Now they might lie about this, but this is so this is so important that they do, especially in a boarding facility and a vet office, because I mean there are germs around, just dogs congregating in areas. They're prone to many contagious conditions that ferrets can also get. When was your last contagious disease outbreak and what was it? Will they be completely honest? Who knows? Do you notify owners when a contagious disease outbreak occurs shortly before or during the stay? Do you notify owners when the pets are sick immediately, or do you wait for them to get better on their own first? Minor tummy upset, okay, but like a cough, runny nose, runny eyes, like conjunctivitis type symptoms, I think that places should be notifying owners immediately. Refusing to eat. A lot of places are a little bit slow to do that, or they just hope that it's going to get better in the next day. Or do you record food intake, bathroom habits, and more? They should be doing this. If not, do not use the facility. There are people who will just write poop reviews and they didn't really ever use the facility. Like, we all know some people are just, they have a bad day. Maybe they lie in the review. But just look at the reviews, look at the bad reviews, and just really kind of understand them. Check on multiple different of their sites. If they have a Facebook page, their Google reviews, Yelp, stuff like that, where they can't really alter the reviews. If they have reviews on their website, they can sometimes pick and choose what ones are actually on the website itself, and really take these reviews to heart. And then some things that I am personally doing for my ferrets and my sitter would be preparing their meals ahead of time. You've probably seen in my Traveling with Ferrets video, I cut up all of the food like in bite-sized pieces already and then put them into meal prep containers. I will be doing that. I have very detailed instructions for their feeding, but there are like a couple quirks that my ferrets have. Remy's a super chewer. Momo is shedding right now, so I might have my sitter brush her every now and then. I also recommend clipping your ferret's nails before your sitter gets there. Your sitter will thank you. And you don't want to risk your ferrets getting caught on anything while you're away. And I also make notes like don't leave anything on the floor, don't leave anything in places where you think that they can't get to because they probably can. And I'm actually going to go through, I asked on Instagram if you guys had any specific questions about leaving your ferrets with a sitter or boarding places. Actually, quite a few. And one of them is how to not get anxiety about doing so. And the only real recommendation I have as far as that goes is thoroughly vetting whoever is going to be seeing your ferrets and getting daily updates. How much would a ferret sitter cost hourly, daily? Now, this is going to totally depend on the person. I mean, people are going to charge anywhere from like $10 to $30. It totally depends. Like, are they going to be staying overnight? Do we drop the ferrets off at the sitter's place or do they stay at our place? That totally depends. Some sitters prefer to do it in their own home and some don't. I would suggest trying to find someone to come to your house just because your ferrets are more comfortable, your house is ferret proof, they know the routine. Advice on finding a sitter who is knowledgeable about raw. That one is tricky. That's just gonna have to depend on you and where you're finding this sitter. I mean, if you're finding a sitter and you specifically say, I would like one with knowledge on raw, I mean, that'll help, but it's going to limit your options by a lot. So, I mean, if you can't find someone who has hands-on experience with raw, just find someone who is open and not totally grossed out by the concept. Do you leave them out or confined to a room? That is a good question. And again, that's going to depend on the person. For me personally, my ferrets get total home access all day, every day, even when we're gone. So I'm going to continue doing that. They just like having all the space. Everything is ferret proofed. Who would you trust to board your ferrets with? No one except for my sister. My sister, Brian, my ferret friends. That's it. No one else. Sorry, mom. Sorry, dad, but I don't trust you. I'd be so nervous. What do you think of spy cams for peace of mind? That's totally fine. I mean, I have a pet camera. You see that little green light right there? That's my pet camera. Yeah, I mean, that's totally up to you if you want to use one. Maybe that would deter them from doing anything suspicious, which they shouldn't be doing anyways, but you know, people are crazy. If you have any specific questions for me as far as like working at boarding facilities go, leave them below. I mean, there are a lot of things that I can't talk about, or any questions at all. surrounding the topic of leaving your ferrets for vacation. But yeah, that is all for today. I will see you guys in my next video. Do not forget to follow us on Instagram, hit the subscribe and like button if you'd like to see more ferret and dog content. But I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye guys.